I was in a second marriage and with the man that I loved more than life itself, but times had gotten very difficult for us. We went through a period of losing everything through bankruptcy and not being able to even buy food at the time. I had two sons when I came into this marriage, and they were just little babies, like a little over one and almost three. And then my husband Don and I had a son, another son. So I had the three boys, but we had bought a business and it was failing, and we were going bankrupt, and it was just a terrible time. And then my 7-year-old son, my son from the previous marriage, or Bill's son, was hit by a car and died. And at the time, I did not really have any faith in God or belief in the afterlife. So when he died, I had nothing really to cling to, not prayer or reaching out for help or anything. It was about 12 excruciating hours, and when Mark died, I remember going into his room, and he was so cold, and I covered him up and saw a tear in his eye, and I leaned over to kiss him and told him, "It's going to be okay, Marky. Mommy's here," as if Mommy could fix everything. And I just collapsed. I don't remember a lot after that, but I remember being in the car with my husband and just, I can't explain the devastation. But after that, I just withdrew. I wouldn't leave the house. I couldn't speak hardly. I wouldn't allow people to come over. I was just isolated completely, and would sit day after day and just in such grief that my life was over. And so a time came when Dawn told me, "Kat, you have to get out of the house. You can't do this. You have to start moving forward again." We argued. We had been arguing a lot prior to my son's death, but it became, when you're in a financial bind, and Don was not used to that, and here he had this family now that he really didn't ask for, and all this pressure that was crushing in on us. We were about to lose everything we owned, and constant phone calls and harassment. And so, we were just arguing, and I loved him very much, but it was just like there was nothing left in life. So he insisted we go out. So we got out the door, and we were arguing and fighting, and we got in the car, and that escalated more and more. Got out onto the freeway, and it just became an all-out brawl. And Dawn said, "You just have to move on." And I said, "I'll never move on." And I came across the car just scratching and slapping and beating at him, and he pulled over and he took his arm and went like that to me and knocked me over to my side of the car. And I literally saw stars, but I just kind of sunk down into the seat and said, "I want to go home." And so he took me home, and I had a tendency when I got cornered in life, I would just run. And I grabbed the car keys and went out and hopped in the car and took off. And he was standing at the door just screaming at me. And I drove, and it was raining, and it was hard to see, and I had this terrible pain inside of me. I thought, what's wrong with me? And pretty soon it got so intense, I pulled the car over and got out, and people were coming by, splashing water, screaming at me and honking, and I thought, I've got to get home. This pain is just the most incredible pain I'd ever had. So I got behind the wheel of the car, and I somehow got back home, and I'm literally practically crawling up the driveway, and Don's at the door, again, of course, just furious with me. And I got past him, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm going to call an ambulance. There's something really bad wrong with me." And I said, "Well, you're that bad, I'll take you to the hospital," and just condescendingly talking to me. So he got to the hospital, and he realized that I wasn't putting this on, that there was something wrong. And the doctors came in, and they asked me how I got the bruise on my back. Well, it had been when Don came across the car at me. And but I didn't want to tell them that, because Don was not a wife beater, and I didn't want them to think that. So I just told them I didn't know how I got the bruise on my back. And again, pretty soon they came back in, and they said the test, they didn't have MRIs or CAT scans back in those days. Right? We're talking back in the late 60s, early 70s, and So their ability to diagnose something wrong wasn't there, but my blood count and everything had dropped so drastically, they knew something was wrong. And they said, we're going to have to take you into surgery to find out what's wrong. Well, I was terrified. I don't even know who these doctors are. It possibly be that wrong with me. So they put me on the gurney and were wheeling me out the hallway, and I saw tiles going by me, and I was scared, and all of a sudden the gurney stopped. It was Don leaned over to me and he said, "Hey, Kat, I love you." And I thought, geez, I didn't think he even liked me anymore, let alone love me. And so then they took me into surgery, and I remember seeing the physicians and the nurses, leaning over me with their masks on around the table, and I knew that I should go under the anesthetic. I had had surgery before, and I remember just would be total blackness, and so I all of a sudden it did just turn black, but I was awake, and it was like kind of a confused feeling, but I knew where I was, but I couldn't see anything. It was just total darkness. And then I felt myself moving through the darkness into what seemed like a kind of a enclosure, a wall or something, almost like being birthed into another area. And I couldn't breathe, and I was just panicking. It was, I don't know how many minutes it went, but I couldn't breathe, and my lungs were bursting, and I needed to have air. But once I got through into this tunnel-like enclosure, I didn't have to breathe anymore, and it was an odd feeling, but I was okay. And I can't tell you my emotions at the time. I was not frightened, but I was not okay either. I was confused. And as I got through that, I remember seeing Dawn and my other two sons down below me by a lamppost, and it was raining, and they were crying because I had died. And I was trying to tell them, no, I didn't die. I'm fine. I'm okay. But I knew they didn't hear me. And then I felt this peace that they were going to be just fine and that I could move on. And as I moved forward through the tunnel, I saw 4 human figures standing off to my left. And I think there were 2 men and 2 women. And they looked extremely concerned for me, like I was in for some big trouble or something. I didn't know who these people were. They weren't, they could have been past relatives that I had never met or whatever, but my son had died. I didn't see him. But we went past these people with these very concerned looks on their faces. And as we went by them, went deeper into this tunnel, I felt peace, not total peace. I was curious. And all of a sudden, I heard this horrendous noise, like a noise that so loud, it was just deafening. This loud, like a freight train coming right over the top of me. And I felt this, like a rope running through the middle of me, going 100 miles an hour, a huge rope. And all of this happening all at the same time, and all of a sudden it stopped. And the thought came to me, there is no God. And then I knew, without any doubt in the world, I knew that God did exist. It was the most incredible feeling. I had been an atheist most of my life, or agnostic, I'll say. I wanted to believe in God, but I really didn't. And when Mark died, there was no way. When people would come tell me that he was with Jesus now, I'd say, Jesus, what does your Jesus need with my son? And the anger and the bitterness and just the total frustration in me would just come pouring out. I hated the even thought of the God. And so my language, my feelings, my thoughts towards God were horrible. I denied God in every way possible. I cursed God. What does God need with my son? This Jesus you're talking about, what has he ever done? We've lived in poverty, and we've lived without hope and not food to eat. All my life it's been this way. So I hated God. I hated the thought of God, because I certainly didn't believe he existed. So that happened, and this knowing, God, there's somebody in control here. God really does exist. And then that noise came again, and the pulling through my chest, and the thought came to me, there is no heaven. And all of a sudden, I knew heaven existed. It was a real place. God and heaven are real. this peace, this overwhelming peace that came over me at that time was something I had never in my life felt. It was incredible. This just unexplainable euphoria, peace, excitement, any good emotion that you've ever felt in your life, accelerated a million times over. And I saw a brilliant light, and we were moving towards it. I knew God existed, I knew heaven existed, and I was going there. And the thought of leaving my sons and my husband, it just didn't matter. I mean, nothing mattered anymore except getting to this place. And I was about there, and this noise came again, and I'm pulling through my chest, and it stopped, and I had the knowing there is a hell. And all of a sudden the floor completely dropped out underneath of me, and I started falling into what I knew was hell. And I knew I deserved to be there. I knew that I had blasphemed God, that I hated this God, that had been my choice to go here. I knew God didn't send me there. It was through my desire to hate God that I was there. God sends nobody to hell. He doesn't. And it's reserved for those who reject God. And the Bible talks about that. It says there's only one way to heaven, and that's our Lord. But, there's more to it than that. I can't really explain it. But our desire should always be to seek our Creator. And to me, that's our God. And so as I was falling into this, knowing I never hit bottom, knowing nobody could ever save me from here, I also felt like I don't think God even knows I'm here. I'm totally separated from everything, even God. But I was wrong. God did know I was there. And all of a sudden, it just stopped. And I was just pleading with God this whole time, of course. I was, God, I know you exist. Please forgive me. Please forgive me, Lord. And I was just screaming this out to God, but the hopelessness that I had was just there. I mean, I knew this was eternity. And when I was screaming out to God, and all of a sudden felt that it just stopped. Everything just stopped. And I started going backwards, back into the tunnel, back to where the beginning of the tunnel was. And I heard a voice say very clearly to me, bring people to me. And then I felt myself coming back through the place that I'd come into there, and I felt the will to live enter back into my body. Now, many times, especially in the olden days, people used to talk about whether the spirit has left him or whatever. Well, that's an actual thing, I believe, because when I went through the tunnel the first time going in, I felt my spirit leave me. I was separated from that. And then I felt myself coming back through this thing, coming back into the surgery room, and I felt the will to live enter back into me. When that will to live entered back into me, I wanted to live at that point, and I was excited that I was coming back. Before that happened, I didn't want to come back. I wanted, even my husband, the pull of my husband and my children wasn't enough. I wanted to stay there. But when that will to live entered back into my body, I definitely wanted to live. And I came back out of the anesthetic screaming, God is real, God is real. And it's been over 50 years, and I'm still screaming that to people. It's been my entire life, and it's as real to me today as it was then. And you can track my record from that day forward. I was I was a God freak, I guess. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I went back to church. Only church I knew at that time was a Catholic church, but I felt God lead me out of that and more into an evangelical church where I could learn about God more, and that was my desire. So I was going to the Catholic church to Mass, and then I would go on Wednesday nights and later on Sunday to this evangelical church. So that was my life, and prayer. I mean, I prayed constantly, and so it was a great time. Nothing anymore really affected me. I knew my son, although I didn't get to see him, was fine, and he was in that place, and I'll be there again someday, and we will be together. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited. I believe that Mark is at the age of reasoning now, and I'm excited to see him, where he would have been. So that death doesn't bother me anymore. Leaving my son doesn't bother me. It's just for a short time. Of course I'd rather have him here, but maybe not. Maybe he would have had a terrible life. I don't know. And so, knowing where he is and how he is an incredible feeling. And, I went to bed one night and I had a dream. This was a dream, not a near-death experience. I had a dream about starting a business. And it was just as real to me as if I was sitting there. And I had always worked at auto agencies, and when I woke up from the dream, I had this desire to start this business. And Dawn thought I was crazy, but I just, I have to do this. And I did start the business back in the 60s. It was, a customer satisfaction deal, where in the car business at that time was just unheard of. I was a very unscrupulous business many years ago. And I started the business, and it's been over 50 years since that's been in existence, and our son has it now. But we became very successful in that, and our walk with the Lord has been great. My two sons walk with the Lord, and my husband does, and I do, and the happiness that we have in our marriage and our life and successes that have happened, I just can't tell you enough. I wrote it in a book. I wrote my memoir, which tells about my childhood and the things I went through there. I went through a horrible childhood. My father was an angry, horrible alcoholic, and so was my mother, mostly to escape my father. We were brought up in horrible circumstances and wanted to go to college, but they wouldn't. They said, you just need to get married and have children. You're not college material, and so I didn't get to go to college or didn't get any normal things in life, and married an alcoholic, just like my parents, and he was abusive and horrible. And I had two little sons by the time I was 21, and a nervous breakdown. Packed the kids into an old beat-up car, and we left Kansas City to Seattle, Washington, which is about, thousands of miles away. Got into government housing. We didn't have food to eat. We'd eat Cheerios 3 times a day, but we had fun. We slept on the floor in sleeping bags. We had a little gas heater stove with a pilot light. We pretended to start a bonfire, and we're camping. And the boys loved it. They'd run through the house, couldn't break anything. And we played games, and we did puzzles, and we didn't have anything, but I got a good job and afforded us to just have a very low poverty life. But and then I met my husband Don, and we lived happily ever after. That's my story, more or less, in a nutshell.
It sounds so interesting, and there's so many things that I think we can dive deeper into. But one of the things that stuck with me the most is, the complete 180 between your attitude towards God after grieving the loss of your son Mark, and the almost understanding, I feel like it is, that you've had afterwards, that he is okay and that you'll be okay and that nothing's wrong. And if I'm not mistaken, this experience has completely changed your way of thinking about it. And I think it would be useful to so many people listening to us if we can dive a bit deeper into how do you see why it had to happen now, and how do you deal with those emotions?
Why did it have to happen? I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that don't believe in God or feel hopeless or whatever. I think that I was a type of person that would not have ever been saved or been changed. My mind would have ever changed. I would have died hating God. And I don't know. I don't know why God chooses certain people to go through these experiences, or I do know they have a purpose. Most everybody that I know that has had a legitimate near-death experience comes back with a purpose. Mine was to bring people to the Lord. So my evangelistic attitude in life is what drives me. and I'm capable of touching a lot of people, and that's my desire. I mean, it's all I really desire to do. So many wonderful people that are suffering so badly, and they need that hope that God can give them, but they're angry like I was, or they have tried to believe it just didn't work, and I just have to say, keep trying. I mean, God's there for you, and there's resistance in you somewhere. And if you just give that up to the Lord, if you just pray to Him, God, forgive me for my sinful life, or forgive me for my unbelief, help me to believe, Lord, or just anything. Just continue. Just nag the Lord to death. Just, let that be your life's purpose, because there isn't anything any more important. I honestly can say, I don't know of anybody that's not turned their lives to Christ and still stayed the same. They're all changed. They're all revived. They're different people. So yeah, that's huge. That's huge. I don't know, again, why some are chosen and some are not for these experiences. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I would ask it myself, But I think we're all chosen. Everybody goes through a near-death experience. Some of us just, when it came back with a purpose. And it's not a burden. It certainly isn't a burden, but I am driven by that. So if all of us had that experience, where would faith come in, and they have to have faith. So their faith has to outdo my experience. and it will, if you just let it.
No, I absolutely believe that. And because you've mentioned your upbringing and your early years, it sounds like you've had a very, very difficult life. And I can definitely understand why you would think that God doesn't exist and you wouldn't believe in Him, because why would He give you such a hard life? You're at the age, you're being born into a family and you haven't had any time to sin or to do any bad deeds, so that would be some kind of a punishment. So I can understand that train of thinking, and I think a lot of us, when we go through challenges in life, regardless whether it's poverty or losing our jobs or being in financial struggles or being in an abusive relationship, whatever our struggles may be, it just feels unfair. It feels like we don't deserve it. It feels like we're being dealt a losing hand. So I want to ask you, looking back now, how do you reconcile that part of your life with your faith? Why do some of us get these challenges? And is it meant to teach us anything?
It's definitely meant to teach us something. Those challenges are what makes us strong. Those challenges are what makes us who we are. And I know that most people I know that have gone through great challenges are more of the people that are the winners in life. They are content. They've overcome these horrible circumstances, some far worse than mine, and they turn out to be these incredible people. And you sit back and look at them and think, my goodness, how could they be like that after what they've been through? But they're stronger, and they're more able to. They're the people that motivate us, and those challenges are what makes us stronger. Or it makes our faith stronger. It makes our lives stronger. It makes us wanting to help others. Our purpose in life to be so much more. So I look at those challenges now with a different attitude, and I know, that it will pass. It'll pass. We just have to hang in there. Then you've lost a child and you think your world has come to an end, and I understand that feeling, or your husband who you are so attached to as part of you. These horrible losses that we experience in life, but we all die. We all do, and some are more tragic than others, of course, but unfortunately that is what life's all about. And so look at your challenges as an opportunity, and to build on that, and to make you the person that God wants you to be. And He does want you to be happy. He does. He wants to reach that inner part of you that is hurting, and he hurts right along with you. And yes, we think, well, can't God just, twitch his nose and everything will be fine? Well, I'm not sure how this all works, but he can't. He can't, because he's given us free will, and he's given us the freedom in our lives to make choices. And some choices that we've made have been wrong choices, and we get ourselves in the bind. And will God help us out through prayer? I've thought a lot about that. Why do we pray? Because I guess our lives are all figured out anyway ahead of time. So what is this good is this going to do? But it does help. It does. And I've seen miracles happening, and I've seen healings happening, and great things. But so I know it helps to pray. But mostly our prayer should be, God, your will be done, and trust that.
That is very true. That we need to surrender to the will of God. And I'm speaking as a control freak and as somebody who definitely thought that you can get your way if I don't want to say that I always wanted to get my way, but I definitely thought that it's good to be in the driver's seat, to have control of everything, to just oversee everything that could be overseen. And I felt like if I do a good job at overseeing and taking control, then nothing cannot go according to plan because I'm in control, so I can make sure that everything goes according to you can imagine how that worked out. But it's definitely, I think, a much calmer life since I've decided that, there's a plan, and if something is not meant for me, then if I see blocks, if something just doesn't happen, then I try to think of the thought of, this is just not meant for me, or it's not meant for me now. And I try to find comfort in understanding that there's probably a reason why I'm not getting what I want, or why something that I've wanted isn't happening, and it is for my own benefit. So I just have to trust that, and I have to trust that I'll get something even better. And if it's just deluding myself, I don't know, but I will say that it's a much calmer and more peaceful life this way, instead of trying to force everything to be according to my will.
Yes, that's beautiful. And I'll bet you that you have seen in your life those things coming about maybe in a different way, or happening, the things that you desire, but it comes through in time a different way or whatever. And so God knows the desires of our heart, and usually we'll either lose that desire or it will come about, one of the two. And but you see that working in your life, and that makes you a strong person to give up that desire to be in control and to allow it to happen, and that it's not meant for you at this time. Yes, that's very wise. Very wise, yes.
Thank you. I wanted to also talk about forgiveness, because it's something that's so important for us to live a good life, but I think it's something that most of us struggle with. And what struck me the most about your experience was that when you were falling from heaven, you said that you understood that you deserved, according to your own actions, that you deserved to be in hell. Now, I want to ask, how do you see forgiveness? And of course, you asked God for grace, and He granted you this. And you've changed your life. For somebody who thinks that they have sinned a lot, because we're definitely all not perfect, but some of us have probably sinned more than others, or we've done actions that are perhaps a bit worse than others. For somebody who just hasn't had the best life and they're thinking they're already doomed, what would be the way to turn their life around? And how can they ask God for forgiveness?
It's such an individual thing, but I do believe that in forgiveness, I think it's to verbalize it first. Maybe in your heart you don't believe it, maybe in your head you don't believe it, but I forgive. My forgiveness really was shameful in forgiving God. I don't feel that was ever an issue. I asked God to forgive me. Yes, I said that many times, and I believed it. But let's say, other people in my life that have really done wrong to me and caused great stress in my life and pain, and trying to forgive those people for their actions, even people that have lied about me and tried to bring me down. I feel angry towards that person, and I don't like them. Well, I've tried to make it a challenge for myself to not make them my best friend, but my purpose in life then would be to like them, and it was like a challenge to me. It was, and being a control freak, you would enjoy that because I was very much that way myself. But I have made some really good friends through people that absolutely crushed me, and close friends, and it's funny because now it's a challenge to me. So if somebody does something to me that I have trouble forgiving them, it becomes a challenge to me to make that right, and it's sort of interesting how that turns out. But forgiveness towards God is huge. I don't know if you can, maybe you can't feel it right now, but say it. Say it over and over and over again. Ask God to heal you, to forgive you. Give you forgiveness in your heart towards Him, and just verbalize it. Whether you feel it or not doesn't matter right now. Just to do that. That anybody in your life that's bringing negativity to you through their actions or their words, whether it be God, whether it be anything, you need to overcome that. You need to be strong enough to verbalize that I forgive them for that. I forgive God for that. It's His will, not mine, be done, and continue that and fight through that, and you will see a change in yourself for the better, and you'll like that change. And just make it a challenge to yourself to do that, and to work at it. It doesn't come easily. Nothing in life that's really worth anything comes easily. It's not, none of us are really handed that golden egg, So it's a challenge, and but do it, because it's really important. Unforgiveness will destroy you. It will absolutely destroy you if you let it. It's up to you.
Yeah. And I think forgiveness is most important for yourself than for the other person that you've forgiven, right? Because we live with those past traumas, and we live with thinking, oh, that person should have acted differently, they should have talked to me differently, and every time we think it, we relive that moment that we were done such an injustice, what we believe was an injustice. So I feel that the benefit of forgiveness is so grand for our own health, and for our own peace of mind. It's not even letting the other person off the hook, but right. It's us being at peace. Regardless of what other people do, it's not justifying it, but it's choosing peace and love for yourself.
Absolutely. Very well said. Yes, and yes, like I said, that unforgiveness will destroy you. So you're hurting yourself through having any kind of bitterness or anger within you, and they eat away at you, at your spirit. Yeah, very important. Very important.
Can I ask you, and I don't know if you want to answer this, and if you don't, that's absolutely fine, but remembering that you've had a life with with alcoholism and abuse, have you managed to forgive your ex-husband as well as your family, your parents?
Well, I'll answer it, but it's hard. There are two people, that would be my ex-husband and my father, both abusive alcoholics, and my father, not me so much, but my older brother, physically and verbally, horrible abuse. And my older brother, just a little over a year older than I am, we were very close, so every blow that went to him went through my heart too, and so to forgive my father. I know I've done the verbalizing of that, but in my heart of hearts, I don't know that I really have forgiven him. And my ex-husband died of alcoholism. He was a pathetic and a horrible person, and I don't know, maybe he became a strong Christian before he died or something. I don't know what he did. But I told him if he ever came around me ever again that I would literally kill him. And I don't know if I would have or not, but he was a horrible man. Anyway, my forgiveness towards him is like forgiving your pet animal for doing something wrong. I guess I've forgiven him, but I don't know. My father is a different story. Things that he caused for my brother and our family, and my mother especially, that we all suffered so much under his tyranny and selfishness, and I don't know. How do you forgive somebody like that? Yeah, that's a good, challenging question. I will think about it more, and I probably need to face that.
No, and I didn't expect you to have said that you did, because I can imagine now, I haven't been in such a situation myself, luckily, but I can imagine, I don't know that I could. I don't know what I would have done in your shoes, for sure, so I don't think any of us can judge, but I think it's, what I wanted to point out with this question is, I think it's so important to be on a path of being better and of forgiving, as we have talked about. But at the same time, there might be times in your life or traumas where you're not there yet. And that's also fine, because it's a process. And I think for everybody listening that has gone through similar life events and challenges, it's fine to not see everything through the lens of gratitude for now. It's fine to not have forgiven everything bad that happened to you. But you're on your way. It's a process, and as long as you're living, a peaceful and happy life now, and you're content with what is, and you're trying to do the good thing, that's all one can hope for. And whenever I talk about kindness, I always say also kindness to yourself, because that's what we tend to forgive, right? We tend to think of kindness in relation to others, but we never think of being kind and speaking kindly to ourselves. So that's what I wanted to point out, and I'm sorry if it took you down memory lane too much.
No, those memories are long gone and healed, but actually realizing that I forgive them is something I still have to do, and I will, because it has to be a blemish down there in my soul, and I don't want that there. I won't let them do that to me. I'll forgive them whether they like it or not.
Exactly. Now, Kat, I know that you've written a book, and I wanted to talk about that. So first of all, writing a book is an incredibly hard thing to do. What drove you to want to write this book, and what can we expect when reading it?
I felt led to write the book. I did. I felt a presence saying to me, sit down every Friday and write. So I did. And back in the time then, I just did that, and I on a piece of paper and a pencil, and I just wrote on Friday. I made myself do that, and I didn't have a computer or anything. But later, it took me 20 years to write the book, so it was a process. And as I would go through these things and write about them, it was hard, very, very hard, especially my childhood and things that formed me. I didn't trust anybody. All my whole life, I've never been able to trust people. And I go way back to the scars that were still on my soul of where I had been drastically wrong. I was riding my tricycle. I couldn't have been 3 years old. And a boy came about my brother's age, who I adored, came up behind me, and he shoved me, and I kind of fell over. He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And he picked me up and helped me. And I got up, and he shoved me again. That time I fell down. And I go crawling back to my tricycle. And, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and gets me back up. And he shoved me down again, and laughing, and walked away. I was a beginning, something that simple was a beginning of not trusting people in my life. that scar stayed with me, well, 80 some years. and things would build on that, and another thing would happen, another thing and another thing, till you don't trust people. And so yes, just little simple things that leave scars on you, if they're not dealt with in your life, will follow you through your life and cause you pain. So a lot of the issues we have in life, we can trace back to our childhood, where that scar was first formed, and go back there, and deal with those things. But we have the scar, the issue there, and whether we think about it probably then, now and then. Why would I think about that so many years later? So that had to be dealt with, and all the I not went through everything, but so I went way back. That story's in my book, more detail, but going back through my life and all these details in life, and how I got over them, what I did to help myself build on that in a positive way. So in the book, it goes from early childhood, where the scars are one after another put in my life, and then dealing with them. The death of my son, all these things that happened. And in high school, my dad was with the government, so we were transferred around the country every 2 years. So I went to so many schools, I couldn't name them all. And people would, the class would be at a different level than I was, or in a different book. So it was all Greek to me. And so they would just say, well, sit in class and we'll pass you on. And learning was very difficult. I didn't learn in school. Most of learning I did was self-taught. And so that is in the book as to how I did that, to come to a place in my life where I started a business and became extremely successful, and could get up and talk to hundreds of people in meetings, and come up with the right answers for things, and how I did that. And so my marriage, a love for a person that I had, I never had felt love until I met my husband, Don. I never, ever had felt love for anybody. I didn't realize that until I actually felt it. And, it was a frightening feeling at first. It scared me. And how I met Don. Don and I only knew each other 28 days before we got married. So how that came about, and this instant love I had for him, and the love story that we have together is in the book. So it goes into a lot of things like that. And then the near-death experience is in detail, what happened and what we went through, all of that. So the book, bottom line, is meant to give people hope, to give them encouragement, to let them know that they can go through these things in life and come out ahead in a winner, and not live in the garbage that life can throw at us. How to overcome all of the things that happen to us, the redemption of our lives.
That definitely sounds like something that we can all use in our lives. So I think we should all try to pick up a copy.
That would be nice. It's called "Is It Safe to Die?" And I'll just let you in on a little secret. It is, but there is something that needs to be done in your life to have that feeling of being safe. So I believe you all are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Kat, where can we find you, and where can we find the book as well?
Yeah, the book is on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon, and it's "Is It Safe to Die" by Kat Dunkle. And in that, my email address is in there, but my email address is THEKAT, the cat 137, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, and at AOL.com. So I'd love to hear from any of your listeners that have any further questions, or to communicate with them. So feel free to get a hold of me.